This is the One Life Podcast, brought to you by One Life Fully Lived, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping you learn how to dream, plan, and live your best life. Let's begin today's show.
Hello, my friends. My name is Christopher Lochhead, and I am one of your rotating hosts of this great new, maybe upgraded One Life podcast. My name is Christopher Lochhead, and I'm going to share this hosting microphone with two of my favorite people, Matt Aitchison and Brandy Salazar, who will also be hosting on a rotating basis on the new, upgraded, now on video and YouTube One Life podcast. And we thought it'd be really fun to start off the rebooted One Life podcast with none other than the founder of One Life Fully Lived, the legendary, the handsome, the talented, the backcountry ski legend, and the real estate, the guy who was number one in the country, Tim Rhode.
Hey, Chris.
How are you, brother?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, and so excited to be the person that helps kick off our new expanded format, as you said, and this is going to be fun, man.
Yeah, how funny or how fun to have video. You know, when I first started with my podcast, Legends and Losers, I thought, who's going to watch two guys talking? But it turns out people do watch two guys talking. And so, those of you who want to check us out on YouTube, but by all means, and of course, we're on iTunes, probably most of you listening on iTunes. So, hey, Tim, why don't we go back a little bit in history? Of course, I remember it well. I've been fortunate enough to be around you for a very long time. And I remember the first time you had an inkling of the idea to create One Life. So why don't we go back to those early days in Portola and some of those early thoughts and backcountry hikes that ultimately, and skiing that ultimately led to One Life.
Yeah, Chris, that's funny because you were there as this was being created in my dome.
I can remember, I want to say it was Eureka Peak, but you were taking me on a backcountry adventure, and I can remember being it was early in the morning, and we're starting to do what was a long climb, and you sort of said, hey, I've been thinking. That's the first time I remember, and I'm not positive it was Eureka, but it was definitely that kind of a situation where you were just in front of me breaking trail as you normally are. And you said, I've been thinking. So maybe take us back there.
Well, the thought process was, and it was either Eureka or Alpine, but it was one of those getting the goods in the woods days, and we were as we are just blessed to have created these incredible, magnificent lives centered around the things that we love best. And so we're out there, the stoke factor was high, we're just having a blast, we're in our element, and our heart rates are elevated, and our states are just in this magnificent place. And I started thinking and I started explaining to you how blessed we are to have this life, and two, how frustrating it is to me that everybody isn't experiencing life on this level, how they haven't yet found that thing or those things that make their lives special and unique, because they're too busy working on their life or in their lives to get out and experience situations like we were and working on their lives. So that was the first thought process that led to One Life Fully Lived.
And how old were you, Timmy? Remind me when you retired.
I retired around 40.
Yeah.
And this was around 50 after 10 years.
After 10 years of being retired?
And having my call. Yeah.
So you'd been retired for about 10 years, and you were having a pretty good time as a retired guy last time I saw. Right? You were doing a lot of skiing.
Yeah, there was sufficient money to pay for the party, and I was skiing 100 days a year, spending a lot of time at the ocean, just spending a lot of time thinking and trying to kind of figure out what's the next chapter of my life look like. I think you were in the same place, actually.
Yeah, I was in a very similar place, and I've sort of been in and out of that place a couple times since we've known each other. I'm also curious, Tim. How did losing your dad, Raymond, play into your feelings and thoughts at the time, and ultimately into the founding of One Life Fully Lived?
Yeah, that was a huge piece of it. My dad was an elementary school math teacher, so I think I've always had that teacher personality inside of me. And there were also a couple other gentlemen, a guy named Harvey West, who owns this town of Gray Eagle up here. I just watched him and what a great man he was, and how he was just so committed to his community. And then a guy named Dick Prada, who was my broker and mentor back in Manteca, where I sold real estate. And same thing, his passion was for adult developmentally disabled adults, and he put his heart and soul into making sure they still had a life. And I just watched these people with their passions, and they were my role models towards doing something bigger than just myself.
And what was it about those role models? Because, a lot of people who have the kind of success that you had, and particularly at the age of, 40 back then, a lot of people just say, hey, well, I want more. I want planes, I want islands, and I want, whatever it is that I want. And so a lot of people just keep on the more work, more money, whatever treadmill. You decided not to. And then ultimately, you spend a lot of time playing, but the playing leads to wanting to give back and make a difference. Tell us about that, to me.
Couple thought process. First of all, I don't know who it is, but somebody said the great ones spend the first half of their lives making it and the second half giving it back. Do you know who that is, Chris? It's like Carnegie or...
It's so funny. I don't know. I'm going to look it up as we're talking. I don't know who said it, but it's so funny that you bring this up, because a good friend of mine, Manny Camara, whose nickname is Manny the Mechanic, he's a category designer in the area of wellness and in particular recovery, and he's what's called a mixed method recovery specialist, and he works with a lot of the top athletes in the Bay Area, San Jose Sharks, a lot of the top UFC fighters, and so forth. And he said that to me a little while ago, that, because he's around 50, and he said that he felt like the first half of his life was all about learning and figuring out his craft, because he sort of put a number of different disciplines together, starting with, in his case, massage therapy and chiropractic. But he said that exact same thing, that he felt the first part of his life was about figuring out his craft and discovering sort of his superpower, and the second part is about giving it away.
So while you look that up, I heard another one that I thought was really interesting. We spend the first third trying to figure it out, who we are and what's our game, and just getting our feet wet, trying to just get it all figured out. And that I can really relate to. The second part is getting it all together financially and making sure that you have your financial future all in line, and your health and fitness, and you have that longevity piece all dialed in. And then the last third is all about leaving a legacy. What do I want others to remember me by? And that just, when I got to look up this guy's name. He's the dean of college football coaches. He kind of like there's a group of them, and he's the leader of all of them. And my good friend Pete Cook introduced me to him, and I can't think of his name offhand. But boy, what a wonderful way to look at it.
To think about it in thirds. And and we live in a culture where it's easy to fall into the more trap, and the me trap, and the Kardashianization of our world, where it's all about me, and it's all about look at me, and it's all about look at me for no substantive reason whatsoever. And so, what do you think is it that made you so different, that said, hey, wait a minute, I've achieved what I think a lot of people in our culture want to achieve, which is great personal and financial success at I'm going to call 40 a very young age. And really, you had the whole rest of your life to do whatever you want. And of course, I know you spent a lot of time playing, getting the goods in the woods, but a huge percentage of your life now you donate to One Life because you wanted to make a difference. And so, what do you think it is about, the examples you had and the way you've architected your life that got you to that place, Tim?
Well, I think I've been blessed in a number of ways, and one of them is being self-educated. I got off to a late start. I never went to college. At 25, I was a part-time grocery clerk, painting addresses on people's curbs to buy diapers for my small kids. And then I sold it just quick. I sold a ton of real estate. I invested way wisely, lived within my means, and this is the basics of One Life Fully Lived teachings, is knowing your ABCs and becoming financially free so you can do the things you want to do. So I think that self-education was a big piece of it, and getting around people such as yourself and a lot of my other friends like Brandy and David Osborne and Pat Hyben and Mike McCarthy and all these, Mike and Lindsay, and all these people who who have created magnificent lives for themselves. And then it just kind of expanded from there. So on one side of my world, I saw these people, and I'll keep going, like Hal Elrod with his Miracle Morning community. And Chris, you've recently been around John Berghoff and John Vroman and Brother James, and there's
that whole group of folks is unbelievable. I don't know how my experience of those guys, Berghoff, Elrod, Brother James, Roman's new book out, Front Row Factor, great new read. Those guys just sort of plopped into my life as a result of One Life, and now I got them everywhere, and they're like the greatest guys. They're just unbelievable.
Yeah. So go back to that day on Eureka Peak. I'm seeing that I have this whole world on one side of me with all this talent and knowledge and heart, and on the other side I'm seeing humanity, if you will, but my little corner of it, of people who are frustrated with their lives and are having problems with their health and with their finances and with their inner peace, if you will. So I started doing all this work myself with a guy named Dr. Fred Gross, and a lady named Debbie Yost started a community called Tall Poppies. So that was kind of like the grandfather and the forerunner for all of this, and so around that time, it just all started germinating and circulating. And I think the really cool thing I did, and I want you guys to hear this, I had no idea of how I was going to do it. So I just put one foot in front of the other. Chris and I and some friends put together a conference in Portola, California 6 years ago. And no, it wasn't in a barn, Lochhead.
It just felt like a barn. I tell people it was a barn, but what was it? Was it a garage?
No, it was the Catholic Church in my town. That's what it is. It's a church, and that was their main pew.
I thought it was like, I didn't think we were actually in the church. I thought we were in like something like a barn connected. That's the actual church.
It's the church. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was, to suffice it to say, it was a modest beginning, for the first One Life. And how many people were there?
There were 92 people there. They paid $20. They got free breakfast, free lunch. We gave away probably a couple hundred books, and we gave away scholarships like we still do, right? If somebody couldn't afford $20, so.
And to put it into context for folks, right? We are in a small mountain town called Portola. What's the population of Portola?
2,104.
104.
No, 2,100.
2,104. Excuse me. And in a beautiful part of the Sierras, one of the most beautiful parts of the world, but a small mountain town. What's unemployment in Portola?
Oh gosh. Well, this is one of the reasons I started it. At the time, it was probably over 25%. Now, and I mean the real unemployment, not this 4.8 garbage they have on the news. The real unemployment was probably between 20 and 30%. Now it's down to probably around 15% in my area.
Wow, that's great. And I can remember thinking at the time, because I've been lucky enough to be sidecarred with you and trying to help a little bit along the way. I can remember preparing my talk. I gave a talk on some approaches to living a legendary life, and I can remember thinking, is this, and I'm going to use the word stuff, but it was a different S word in my head. Is this stuff really going to fly in this small mountain town, in this what obviously felt like a barn, but turns out was a church? And I'll never forget it. I'll never forget standing there that day. I'll never forget the look on people's faces, and I'll never forget, and most importantly, I'll never forget the conversations that I had with folks as that One Life event was playing out, and how open they were to it. And what it really taught me was, it's one thing to know something intellectually, and it's another thing to experience it. But it doesn't matter where you are. Doesn't matter, what the age of people are or where they are in their life. A conversation called, how do I dream, plan, and live my best life? And how do I do that in the context of a great career and or building a great company? That's a powerful conversation that makes a difference to anybody in any place.
Right. Yeah, that's what was amazing, was those 92 people walked out fired up to dream, plan, and create their best life. And if any of you have heard Chris speak, he talked about 3 kinds of people. You either suck, you don't suck, or you're legendary. And people were all, what? How could he say this? And then he went through his analogies of movies and restaurants, and it was just super powerful. And Mike and Lindsay did a session on vision boards. We had, just like we do now, we had our keynote speakers like Chris. We had all these different breakout sessions. We had a lot of sessions for young people, and so it was a great event, and it helped us slowly, organically build a community of one-lifers, if you will, that are tuned in, turned on to their life. And I'd like to think we've created a very unique ecosystem where having adult conversations about the things that really matter in life is the norm. It's almost like a counterculture.
Yeah, because, for a long time, I'll never forget when I did my first, personal development, self-improvement training. I was 18 years old, so about 30 years ago. And I can remember having conversations with people about this exact topic. How do I live my best life? How do I unpack what's really going on in my head? What does it mean to be fully self-expressed? What does it mean to live a great life? And how can I proactively create the future of my choosing? That kind of a conversation 30 years ago was a conversation that if you brought it up at dinner, half the people in the room were upset or confused or something, right? It was not a commonplace kind of conversation.
Right. Yeah, it's times have changed, and now a lot more people are dialed in. And I think One Life's a cool place for a lot of people to grow and to figure out how can I play my game best? As Chris said earlier, my thing's backcountry skiing. We have a gentleman who's the epitome of One Life, because we asked him, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you want to do with your life? And he said, you promise you won't laugh? We go, no, tell us. He said, dude, I want to be living in a tree in Mendo. And that's become our joke for whatever One Life Fully Lived means to you. Go for it. But how are you going to do that? How are you going to eat? How are you going to get clothing? How are you going to get up and down? What's the logistics of living in a tree in Mendo look like?
And hey, if that's what your dream for your life is, then you could go with God, as they say, right? We want to help people dream, plan, and live their best life. And the definition, it's interesting. Of course, I host a podcast called Legends and Losers, and people ask all the time, well, what's the definition of a legendary life? Well, it's your definition of what legendary is for you.
That's exactly right.
Right? But it needs to be true. It's not like some BS sort of whipped cream on poo-poo kind of a thing, right? It's like, what authentically, in a no BS kind of way, would be your legendary life?
Right.
Isn't it incredible just asking that question, what it blows open?
Yeah, and you said something earlier, or just a minute ago, about no BS. What is your legendary life? And there's a lot of people in our community right now doing the hard work of creating their one life fully lived. And it's not like once you decide to do this, everything just lines up and it's some magical, straight line path. Of course there's ups and downs and trials and tribulations. It wouldn't be challenging if there wasn't, but when you have a focused dream that's in your head, armed with a written plan, armed with how am I going to fund it, also with how am I going to be healthy enough to pull this all off in a community of people doing the same, where this is the norm. This is, everybody's got their dream, everybody's got their plan, everyone's going towards it. This is the ecosystem you find yourself in. It makes it, I get it. All right,
Yeah.
I'm playing my game.
Well, and it's interesting. You mentioned something a second ago, Tim, about how times have changed and our ability to have this conversation. Just pulled this data up for you. This is from Forbes. On Forbes, they say, quote, in 2015, 94% of millennials reported making personal improvement commitments, compared with 84% of boomers and 81% of Gen Xers.
Wow.
And here's an interesting thing. The boomers said they spend an average of $152 a month on self-improvement. And millennials are saying they anticipate spending double that.
That's awesome.
And so you're absolutely right. And Timmy, dare I say, you are a visionary.
Whoa.
Well, think about it, right? If you look at that data, and you have 90-something% of millennials saying that self-improvement is important, and they're looking at spending $300 a month on self-improvement. And I'll never forget, in the beginning of One Life, you sort of saying to me, look, we want to help people with their financial skills so that they understand the basics, balance a checkbook, spend less than I make, plan for the future, the good basic stuff. And then beyond that, how do I create an economic platform for myself where my passive income takes care of my expenses? That's a powerful thing. The second one being, who am I, right? What matters to me? What would a legendary life look like for me? What you might think of as the self-actualization part of it. And then the other part I love about One Life is how practical it is. You hear a lot of these self-improvement discussions and they seem a little bit airy-fairy. They're up in the air somewhere and they're not very specific or practical. And the planet part, to make it real for people, is been a very big focus since the beginning. Maybe, Tim, could you share a little bit about the specifics and the One Life Fully Lived plan?
Sure. So I touched on it without talking about it. So we created My One Life Roadmap. It's the class you wish you had in school. And here's our core teachings, no matter where you are in life, by the way. First, figuring out, who am I at my core? Why was I put here? What's my unique fingerprint that makes me stick out, and how can I develop that? Next is, what's my dream? Where am I going with all of this? Where do I see myself 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What's my life look like down the road? Then is, what's my written plan? What's the structure of how I'm going to get there? You wouldn't plan a trip to New York and just get in your car and start driving. Take a left at Beckworth. You got to get on 395 at Reno to Highway 80. You got that's the structure. The next piece, I touched on this before, is the financial piece. Knowing your financial ABCs. What's coming in every month? What's going out every month? What's left over for far too many debt reduction? Hopefully for investing, so someday you can be financially free and do the things you've always wanted to do. And the last piece is, how am I going to be healthy in my mind, body, and spirit to create this magnificent life I was put here to live? So those are the One Life core teachings. And like Christopher said, it's very practical. It's life's basics in a box, and we feel like it's the first thing you need to learn, and then all of the other self-help comes from there.
And do you feel comfortable, Tim? I know we have so many of them sharing some One Life success stories.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's a, let me do this. Instead of an individual, let me tell you about a group. There's this group of millennials that are in One Life.
You mean those lazy, good for nothing, those people?
Yeah, right.
Not our millennials, hey, Timmy? We got some legendary millennials around.
Yeah, these people are, people tell me, I go to conferences and it's usually older people that are, old white males, if you will, that are all there trying to learn this same stuff. And at our conferences, we have people from all walks of life and all different levels of life mastery. And one of the ones I'm most proud of is all these youngsters that are in there, let's say from 18 to 30, that are tuned in, turned on, know their game. Many of them have their, quote, day job, if you will, a couple other income streams, rental properties. They've got all sorts of investments. They're healthy. They've got these huge hearts for giving back, and they've bought way into what we are doing, and now want to help us go into the schools and other places to make a difference to the next generation coming up.
That's the most powerful thing. We had my buddy Skip Jansen on Legends and Losers a while ago, and he's an incredibly successful sales executive in the event management business. And one of the first things he says is at the very beginning of the episode he's on, he says, I was a loser till I was 38, and Skippy had a challenge with alcoholism, and so he talks about what a difference AA has made in his life, right? And this community thing is so powerful, regardless of what you're up to. What the sort of one of the dots that's been connected at One Life is when like-minded people come together in a community, and in this case are all supporting each other and living legendary lives. There's this amazing thing that's happened at One Life where people who first started to show up and participate were more doing it for themselves, I think. You tell me. And then a lot of them, as they got their own stuff together and they became more successful and they continued to participate in the One Life community in one form or another, they're now the people giving back, So if I think about Maddie A as an example, right? I mean, here's a young entrepreneur who originally starts off, I don't know, we could ask him, in One Life, probably wanting to help himself, but now he's helping others as well as helping himself. So maybe share a little bit about this component of, on one hand, I'm working on myself, but on the other hand, I'm helping other people work on their best life.
Yeah, the best analogy I can give you is there was a game when we were a kid. It was called a Barrel of Monkeys. And
I remember it well.
Yeah.
You mean you didn't play with an iPad when you were 4?
No, it was Slinky, Play-Doh, Etch-a-Sketch.
Well, and sticks.
And yeah.
We used to make. Well, no, I mean like sticks. Like we used to play with sticks. We used to make we could convert a hockey stick into a gun that shot the little spring from the clothespin. I
got you.
What the heck? Clothespin. Thank you. Anyway, so we made our own stuff for games.
Right. So the Barrel of Monkeys theory is while a monkey is lifting you, and maybe you have your finances down and your dream down and your plan down, but you don't have health and fitness. So somebody's helping you with this health and fitness realm, and you may be helping that person or bring somebody else along with their dream and their plan and finance, because that's where you're strong. And there's been a lot of that in our community of people who come in for, unquote self-help and to learn what's next for them. And they see, you know what? I'm good at this. What if I help teach this? So everybody's, it's this magnificent community where you take what is needed and you share the gift that you were blessed to have.
Yeah, and it's been so fascinating to see, Tim, how that's developed. So, how many people in the One Life community today?
We have about 4,400 on our in our Facebook One Life community, and yeah, it just keeps growing, and it's just in a really neat place right now.
So let me ask you about that. When I first met you, if you had told me that you were going to be successful at creating a community, a network, and you were going to do it simultaneously in the physical world with these events that we do at One Life, and in the digital world with Facebook and the website and Instagram, like, no disrespect to me, but you didn't exactly look like the king of social media community creation when I met you.
No, and I think that's the beauty of what we've done. If anybody knows me, somebody told me this morning, I was on a call with a lady from Montreal, and she said, well, tell me about yourself. I said, I'm just a dumb hick from the sticks. And anybody that knows me knows it's not that I'm dumb. It's just not, I'm just not, I wasn't the straight A lineal, brilliant person. I think what I have is a vision for what could be, and a tenacity and a determination that's pretty big. So
I love it. And I always look for philosophical leadership from Spinal Tap, and as Spinal Tap said, there's a fine line between clever and stupid.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so it is incredible. And for me as a participant, and hopefully a little bit of help along the way, Tim, it's just been incredible to watch and to participate in. We were joking a little bit about Brother James and Broman and Berghoff and Hal Elrod and those folks. And there's just so many people in my life today that I interact with on a fairly regular basis that bring awesomeness into my life, if you will, that I've met through the One Life community. And it goes on a daily basis. It's not just about our events. The relationships that get created through One Life are really extraordinary. And so I want to thank you for that. I think what you've done to open people up to have an authentic dialogue around what does it take for me to design my version of my own best life, my own legendary life, and then give people practical tools for as close to free as possible. That was the other thing that I loved about the idea from the very beginning, which is how do we deliver tools and resources and training and so forth to people around figuring out who they are, getting concrete about their dream for their life, and then getting concrete about the plan for making that dream come true, and then really living that plan. It's such a powerful thing to have created, and now to have so many other people creating additional things on top of it. So why don't we talk about some of the things that are going on right now, some of the events that are planned this spring and for 2017?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my awesome team right now. We've started off, it was myself, my wife Tina helping a lot, Brian Rocha, yourself, Mike McCarthy, and Lindsay just helping us get the base together, and now we've grown it. We have Lori Wan and Jenna Bain have created the My One Life roadmap and are facilitators, and are now training new facilitators. We figure we'll need hundreds of those in the coming years to get in with the Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters and stuff. We have just brought on Susan Jacobson to help us with fundraising. My son-in-law CJ Skog is doing a great job with like all the back office and 1,000,001 details. Rhonda Smith has helped us immensely growing our One Life community and has been really big in there. And then we have Brandy Salazar, Patrick Cullinane, and Rick Graves are currently serving on our board to help us with that. And Chris, you've just been an incredible supporter. As an example, Chris just recently did a create your category fundraiser for us. We did a workshop down at his place, and he helped us raise $38,000 for One Life. So yeah, we're in a really good place. We've got an incredible team to take it to where we want to go. Now we got to step up our game, and that's what we're in the middle of doing, where we now hold 2 conferences a year, one in Sacramento, which will be this coming October, and then one in Philadelphia, which is June 3rd and 4th. We'd love for you to come to that. And we're also doing our first, we're calling it Dare to Dream Day, and that's in Philly, May 5th, and that's going to be with, can you hear me okay, Chris?
I hear you great, buddy.
Okay, that's going to be with 500 inner city kids in Philly. And this is the first one of these where we're taking all the One Life teachings, all of our One Life community, and many of our mentors, and taking our teachings into where they need it most. And along with community leaders like Will Little and Julian Bradley, and all of the high schools, middle schools, charter schools, we're going to create magic combining music, movement, and teaching our One Life roadmap to all of these young kids. And I'm just so excited about that.
And why do you think, Tim, that the One Life roadmap and the plan and all the program, the whole program and all of the tools and assets that have been created to help people dream, plan, and live their best life, why do you think this works in the inner city of Philadelphia?
Well, for one thing, we feel like we're taking teachings to people that haven't been exposed to this. If you're listening to this, I'll bet you've heard of Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, Marianne Williamson,
Oprah.
Neil Godfrey, Oprah, all these wonderful thought leaders who teach this stuff. Well, a lot of these kids have just never been exposed to any of this. It's all new to them, and we can't wait to get them thinking, dreaming about, who the heck am I? What's my dream? Where am I going with this one and only precious life?
Well, and of course, our intention with the One Life podcast is to bring as many of those leaders on as possible. And so for those of you who can come to our events, that's great. And in the event that you can't join us at those events, we're going to try to share as many people, or share with you as many great people from the One Life community on this channel as well, because the commitment of One Life is to help you live, plan, dream, and live your best life. And regardless of what the channel is, right? I mean, there's this, what I love about what's happening right now, Tim, is there's this phrase in marketing and digital marketing right now, people call it omni-channel marketing, right? You sort of got to be everywhere. If you're a retailer, you got to have a physical location and a digital presence and a mobile one and a this and a that. And so whether you realize it or not, you and Rocha and the rest of the team are creating what's called an omni-channel strategy for exposing the world to some of the best thinkers on how to dream, plan, and live your best life, for, if not free, as close to free as we can possibly make it.
Yeah, what's really cool is we find everybody is, no matter where you are in life, you're working on 1, 2, or 3 things. Maybe you're still working in your career, but you're a weekend warrior really working on your fitness, and you want to run your first half marathon, let's say. We have community members who have ran a number of these and are experts on that. Maybe I'm diving more into spirituality, and I found some incredible mentors and teachers within our community that I'm now coaching with, that are helping me go deeper and go in, if you will, for a greater depth in life. So there's so many different things one can work on that's next for you. And I'd like to think we have a lot of depth and talent within the community that no matter where you are, what you need, if you go to the One Life community on Facebook and say, hey, I'm into blah, 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 does anybody know anybody for that? I'll bet within 10 minutes you get 2 or 3 experts.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think most people probably come to One Life because they want to get something. And then a lot of people get what they get, and their desire to give something becomes bigger than their desire to get something, if you will. And the interesting thing that has happened to me, Tim, is, from the very beginning, because of course you and I were talking about One Life before it was even called One Life. It was just a tickle in your brain, right? But the cool thing for me personally, I got to share with you, I don't know if I've ever quite told you this, is, I'm somebody who comes to One Life with a commitment to give, right? And I've donated from the beginning, and my time and all that stuff. And the only thing I ever, if you will, wanted to get was the satisfaction of giving where I could, right? And the interesting thing for me is, as someone who showed up wanting to give, I have gotten so much more than I have given. It's ridiculous. And most recently, guys like Berghoff and Elrod and of course Maddie A have just like stepped up and encouraged me to do the podcast Colin and I do, Legends and Losers, and have been like insanely supportive on so many dimensions. And so I guess my point in sharing this is, you show up in the One Life community, and you show up wanting to get what you want to get and wanting to give what you want to get, or give and get what you want to give and get. And there are these incredible serendipitous, accidental discoveries that happen, whether it's people themselves, and then what those people open you up to. And I tell you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I think if it weren't for Maddie A, I probably wouldn't have done Legends and Losers. And it's a simple example, but it's an unexpected thing that happens when you get a group of very committed, very successful, healthy people who all want to live their best life and help others do the same thing. There's something great that has been created here, Tim.
Yeah, 2 things I want to touch on with that. One is, you're absolutely right. When people come to our conferences, there's usually 1, 2, 3 things that they're working on, that they want to make sure they go to these sessions. We have like 50 different incredible presenters from all walks of life doing 6 breakouts at a time. So there's something for everybody, all levels of mastery, but it's the connections you meet. It's the conversations in the hallway. I'll get up and roam around at 2 in the morning and the hallway's full of people still talking. They can't go to sleep.
I'd love to know what happens for all the people at a hotel that we're at when these events are going down, and because the whole building seems to be levitating and right? Yeah, and I have seen people sneaking into our stuff and or stopping me in the hall because they see the name badges and they're like, "You guys are all fired up. What are you guys doing?"
Yeah. So one other thing that I've noted is, I started One Life Fully Lived to help those that need hope and a purpose the most. But I found that there's this other group we're really helping. It's the people who are on their way and well on their way. We're giving them the gift of help others, and sometimes get so up in problems and our own day in and day out struggle and chase that we forget it's not just about us. And there's no better feeling in the world than getting a note or a Facebook message saying, "You impacted my life."
Yeah. You made a huge difference, and
Right.
I just love your commitment to that, and I want to thank you, Timmy. What you've done is extraordinary, and the difference you've made, to so many people, myself included, it's awesome. What are you excited about for the future?
Oh, wow. Well, I was told by Papa Rocha, don't go painting too broad of a picture.
But I know you have an evil plan.
Yeah, I see us having a huge effect on our culture. Let me just say that we want to change our culture to where it's cool to care, and we plan to infect the world with what we call the dreamer's disease. And if you play the song Get What You Give by New Radicals, it's always been our theme song. Wake up, kids, you got the dreamer's disease. Yep, you know the song. So that's all I'll say is over the years, watch us. We're going to be a force in helping people dream, plan, and create their best lives possible. We plan to be just a planet in another solar system of all these wonderful people in the quote self-help business, but we plan to really help a lot of people do live their best lives. So.
Well, that's awesome, and that sounds like a great place to maybe kick out of this wave. And so thank you, Tim. Thank you for everything you do for all of us in the One Life Fully Lived community. And we want to thank everybody for tuning into the One Life podcast today. You can subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube. This is for those of you who are listening, you can get to see how handsome we really are in person on YouTube. And you can follow us on Twitter at One Life Fully Lived. You can find us on the World Wide Web at lifefullylived.org. And you can email us, info@onelifefullylived.org. And with that, we'd like to thank you so much for your time and attention today and wish you a fully lived life today.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Timmy.
Don't you take the day for granted. Gotta